speakers with us today. And I can just read off the lineup for you guys, or if you would like to just kind of introduce yourselves. I don't care what order you go in. So if one of our more enthusiastic speakers would like to introduce themselves first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Victor. I'm an associate at Nichols Lew, LLP. Nichols Lew is a boutique in Washington, D.C. It's a government contracts boutique. There's about, I don't know, I think 11 lawyers, so not a big firm. And it's relatively new. It was founded in the past 3 years or 4 years. So talk more about that later.
My name is Benjamin Phillips. I'm a law clerk at the Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. It's the government contracts board. We do CDA claims mostly, but we also have FEMA jurisdiction. We do mediation, other types of ADR as well. There's about 14 judges, and I'm a full-time law clerk. It's a 1-year appointment, but I'm very excited to be there.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Charlene Storino. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for Procurement Operations at the Department of Homeland Security. We have about 14 to 15 government contract lawyers in our section, in a law firm, quote unquote, of over 100 attorneys within DHS headquarters, which of course does not include any of the components within DHS like ICE, FEMA, FLETC, CBP, USCIS, which all have their own legal offices and which all sort of report up to DHS OGC.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Colin Swan. I'm a senior counsel in the Office of Suspension and Debarment at the World Bank. My immediate unit is a very small unit. We only have 4 attorneys with about 3 or 4 support staff. But the World Bank as an institution is humongous. It's over 15,000 employees with offices in, 80 to 100 countries all around the world. I can talk a little bit more about what the bank does generally and what we do specifically later on.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Just really quick, I did forget this during my introductions. If anybody has any kind of questions as we're going through, feel free to message myself or Josh, and we can kind of save those questions that you have for the end and read them off to the lovely panelists. So I'll let Josh go from there. Sorry.
Right, so what we're hoping to do with this panel is to get some insight into how students currently looking for jobs outside of big firms can get into that. So I'd like to ask our panelists, how did you get your current position?
Well, I can speak. For me, it's a small firm, right? We didn't have like Nichols Lew doesn't have a recruiting department or anything like that. I was working at another place and I got a LinkedIn message saying, "Hey, you want to get coffee?" And this is a networking story. So then I went and got coffee with first one of the partners at the firm, and we didn't know each other before, but we knew people within the government contracts community. DC is a big city, and there's a lot of lawyers in DC, but the government contracts community can be surprisingly small, and we had a lot of common touch points. And then, after that, it grew into, do you want to come back for another coffee? And I met, it was kind of like an informal interview. As a small firm, interviewing is like a long drawn out process. And it's hard because, people are working. You're trying to like do your day job. And then if you're recruiting somebody, you have to carve out time for that. And so the firm, they weren't like really fast. And that was okay for me at that point in time where I was. And I was also curious because going to a smaller firm, you're kind of like, okay, this is more, it's more intimate, and there's these individuals who, if someone got hit by a bus, is the firm going to go out of business? So anyway, it kind of fell into my lap, and I know that the firm itself, like, it doesn't advertise a whole lot. And I've seen other firms about the same size where, there might be job postings, but those are expensive for small firms to, use kind of like recruiters and websites and like stuff like that. So candidates, if you Google search or if you have like a list of, I don't know, kind of like firms that are practicing in that area, you can approach them and be proactive. And I know that we hired a GW person because she approached she approached the firm like about a year ago. So.
For myself, I went through this standard interview process. The CBCA posts all of its clerkships on CORE as well as their website. So we have fall, spring, summer, and full-time law clerks. So prior to being a full-time law clerk, I spent my summer after 2L year as a summer law clerk at the board. So I was already familiar with the process. I was familiar with the judges and how the interview process went. So when it was time for me to apply to the full-time position, I felt like I had a leg up because I knew what to expect. But the interview process is very straightforward. Judges are very friendly. They're comfortable to talk to you. It's a standard process. Same questions that asked over the summer, spring, fall are asked for the full-time law clerks. And the workload is also very similar. Just you have a little more responsibility when you're a full-time because they trust you more. But the way I got my job was just through the posting on CORE.
For myself at DHS, I worked at ICE for a number of years, which is one of the components, and sort of networked and knew a lot of the folks at DHS headquarters. So when a job opening came up here at DHS, that's when I applied and sort of used those networking connections to sort of get my resume to the front of the line, so to speak. And it was good that I also had a good reputation within the community, the government contract community within DHS, that it was also considered. And so I've been with DHS for 6 years. But as far as government contract goes, I've sort of been doing this for, what's it now, 15 years or so. So sort of just a lot of it's making a lot of connections with folks when you get to sort of higher level in the agencies, as Andrew mentioned. It's sort of networking and sort of getting out there to know people, whether it be at conferences or, just networking through LinkedIn or, through our internship program that we have at DHS. I know Ben came through it at once upon a time. Leslie was through it as well as some other folks at GW. So it's just sort of making those connections and using those inroads to help you along as finding jobs, and also to figure out like what's the best course of action throughout your career as to where to go and what to do.
So for me, I actually started at a big firm right out of law school. I went to Wiley Ryan in their government contracts practice group, and then clerked for a year at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, and then went back to the firm. At the time I ended up moving to the World Bank, I wasn't really looking to move. I was kind of happy where I was. I kind of expected to be at the firm for a couple of years and then kind of figure out my next move later. This opportunity arose really out of connections that I had developed in law school. So one of the, Steve Schooner, who I had researched, was his research assistant for and had taken a number of his classes in law school, had sent around a notice that the Office of Suspension and Debarment at the World Bank was hiring. And I have always been interested in international affairs, international development. I went to college, undergrad, thinking I was going to be a foreign service officer. Obviously, that didn't pan out, but I still had this sort of interest in international, development, and government contracts fits very, very neatly into that interest. Wasn't doing a lot of international focus at the firm that was all based on the U.S. But when this opportunity kind of came into my inbox, I kind of felt like I should apply and see what happens, kind of thing. And I was lucky enough to get it. And I've been there for about 5.5, almost, it'll be 6 years in May, at the bank. So, the thing that I would say to sort of keep in mind is even connections in law school will pan out several years down the road. You may not, think about it or realize it now, but you'd be surprised kind of what comes back. In terms of, the World Bank specifically, there's a lot of different hiring processes that can happen. So they have formal postings, which you can go onto their jobs board page and see all the different positions that are being hired through competitive processes. But then they also have a lot of what are known as short-term consultants or short-term temporary contracts, which are supposed to be project-based, but those aren't always advertised in the same way. So you can get those through kind of connections. They don't have the same level of job security because they're designed to be sort of short term, but they do help you kind of get your foot into the door. So, we do have some interns or people who come in for a short time who kind of get the lay of the land, make some connections inside the institution, and then can consider what their next steps are. So happy to talk about that if anyone has questions.
Thank you all. And our panelists, you've been very gracious because Josh and I have just been asking open-ended questions, and you've kind of been going in a very nice orderly fashion between you guys. So I appreciate that you're all just kind of jumping in instead of us kind of asking a specific panelist a question that you're all kind of sharing with us. So we appreciate that. So just kind of going through some of our other questions that we have for you. And I know some of you already touched on this, but kind of just what drew you to your organization?
I'll go again. What drew me to Nichols-Lou was this government contracts focus. Like Colin, I was at a big firm before. I was at Perkins Coie. And what happened there, I mean, like, I think people understand this, large firms are essentially collections of multiple practices, right? And so, and that's how big firms allocate risk, and litigation's down, corporate's up, and the revenues are all kind of staying the same. And what happened to me is that there was a disruption in our government contracts practice group. And I found myself kind of, feeling my way forward. I mean, the firm was nice and gracious, and I was doing fine there. But I felt I was being pulled to do stuff that that wasn't government contracts focused. And at the time I was like, well, this is where I want to make my career. I can trust the firm and just kind of hunker down, put my head down and wait it out and ride it out and see what happens. Which didn't have a lot of, I don't know, that gave me like a kind of an uneasy feeling. And, but, so I was, passively looking and open to, suggestion. And so when I started the networking with Nichols-Lou, betting on a small firm could be risky, but staying at a big firm until they push you out could also be risky. So I jumped at the opportunity after, kind of did my due diligence, and I have no regrets because even though it's a small firm, with 11 attorneys, it's still like a big government contracts practice in a way. You can look at some big firms and, like Wiley is an exception. They're huge, with a huge government contracts practice just as the point of comparison. But some other firms, they might not have more than a handful of lawyers who focus like on bid protests or CDA claims and things like that. And Nichols-Lou, that's all we do. It's, I have no regrets. And actually, the nature of my practice beforehand, was very much focused on like defense contractors because they can pay big firm bills. But at a small firm, the rate flexibility is much different. The rate mix is a lot different. And we have a lot of nonprofits. We do a lot of grant and cooperative agreement guidance and assistance to, they're not for-profit companies. They're institutes, they're, charities. They run some really interesting programs with an international bent because of the DC focus. And so, it's been actually, really, I don't know, confirming because I enjoy this work. The clients are totally different, and you get to do a lot of different things. And so that's also what, kind of sealed the deal, so to speak.
I would say what drew me to the CBCA was the sense of familiarity. As I said, I worked there as a summer law clerk. So going back there for a full-time position, I knew what to expect. I knew how a lot of the judges think. I knew what the workload was, which is a sense of comfort, but I also knew that they would challenge me more. When I was there over the summer, I was able to do a lot of interesting work, and they were able to expose us to a lot of things that I knew about from law school, but I didn't necessarily think I could go handle on my own. So through the process of, doing different draft decisions, memos and stuff like that, I was able to learn a lot when I was there just over the summer. So when I saw the opportunity to go back for a full-time position, I knew that I would learn a lot more. I also knew that I would gain some experience from the judges, because the board has 14 judges. And although you don't work with all of them directly, you can at least chat with all of them. And they have a wealth of experience. They have many, many years combined in government contracts. And I thought it would be too good of an opportunity to pass up to go back there for another year and just get even more experience under my belt. So that's what drew me back.
For me, I started as a active duty Army JAG out of law school, and did that for a number of years before I decided the Army wanted me to go to one direction. I wanted to take my career in government contracts. So we parted ways from the active duty side, and I became an Army civilian, working for an Army contracting activity in Alexandria for a few years before they decided to close it down and farm those positions elsewhere. So interviewed for a bunch of places. I had a job lined up at Army OGC doing ethics and fiscal law. And then I also applied for a job at ICE. And I thought, let me try a federal civilian agency for a little bit and see how that works versus a DoD agency. And then, did ICE for a number of years and then moved up to DHS headquarters. I'm still doing the Army Reserve thing. So I still working my way to 20 years on that. Hopefully soon, a couple more years and we'll be done. But yeah, so it's wanting to stay in government contracts and just sort of like figuring out like the wickets and where to go to get that experience and to continue to grow. Work in a great office with great people that you want to go to work with every day. You may have clients every now and then that you don't want to deal with, but I think that's indicative of every federal agency. So no matter where you go, you're going to run into that issue. But it's really about the people and then sort of the variety of the issues that you may deal with and then how to deal with them and how to advise your client, which makes the difference in the kind of office that you want to work in. And enjoy DHS even through some of the pitfalls and things in the news that you see with the change in administration and change in scope and issues. But it's a great place to work and enjoy the government contract practice there.
So I think I kind of already answered at least the beginning of that, last time, where, my interest has always been kind of in international development, international affairs since college. And so that's definitely what drew me to the World Bank. I think more generally, I am a mission focused person. Like I always prefer to have, I like to have, even an overarching kind of sense of mission or a sense of goal that I'm working to or contributing to on a day in, day out. Absolutely no offense to the law firms and the private practice practitioners. But for me, I felt like that experience was less mission focused, right? You're brought in by a client to fix a big problem and then they go away and you don't really hear what happens to that contractor, how they are performing. So, you kind of are brought in when necessary. And so the mission of the World Bank definitely appealed to me. And I like, still to this day, really appreciate being a part of that broader mission to, address developmental issues and end poverty and, boost shared prosperity and all of that. I also am very, very fortunate to be a part of a small, tightly knit team that works very, very well together. I always really enjoyed working in a team setting, particularly in small offices. That was one of the aspects of my clerkship that I really, really enjoyed was, it was 4 clerks with the judge and an administrative assistant. So there were, 6 of us in chambers. And we were constantly bouncing ideas off of each other, sharing drafts with each other. And it's very much the same kind of dynamic in my current job. The other thing that appeals to me in this job is it's similar to the clerkship in that it is somewhat adjudicative. So my office reviews sanctions cases, so cases that this separate investigative office at the World Bank is charged with going out and conducting investigations on projects all around the world that the bank finances. And there are so many different contractors and individuals that are involved in these projects. Inevitably things happen. And so whenever there is allegations of misconduct, the investigative office investigates that. And if they believe they have enough evidence to bring a case forward and what could potentially lead to a debarment or a sanction, they prepare that case and they send it up to our office. And our office reviews the case. And we review it objectively, independently of the investigation. We look at the case file and we make an objective basis. Is there enough evidence to indicate that this respondent more likely than not engaged in misconduct? And if so, we're the office that moves the proceedings forward and takes potential, sanctions actions against the individual. So, or the firm. So I liked that aspect of my current work too. And it's really like thinking about how to come to what is the right answer? What is what is the story that happened here? And what is the objective? What does the evidence say? I have always been kind of academic in that way too. I advocacy and litigation was fun. I enjoyed it, but it didn't really it wasn't my sort of reason for being. Like my wife, Jana Rust, who works at a law firm, very much enjoys the arguing and the litigation aspect. Like she likes poking holes in her opponent's arguments. She likes, helping clients find, okay, well, you have this problem. How can we solve this? How can we get there? Whereas for me, I'm very much more like, well, what should the law be? What should the law look like? Or how should things come out? And so this particular job very much fits with my personality in that way.
Thank you all for those. I'd like to say for those who joined the audience in the last few minutes, we're saving some time at the end of the presentation for your questions. So in the meantime, feel free to send those to me or Roxanne, and we'll try and ask those for you. For the moment, though, Andrew, if we can start with you again, we'd like to hear from all the panelists on this. What do you like best about your job? And insofar as you're comfortable sharing, what do you like the least?
Okay. What I like best about my job, well, I think it's the client contact, actually. At a small firm, I think that there is more opportunities to, engage with the client. And we have a variety of different clients. We have individuals, and we also have organizations, some large organizations and some small organizations. But what I've found is that no matter like whether it's an individual and they're subject to a target letter, or maybe they're a small business owner, or you're dealing with the general counsel of a larger company with millions of dollars at stake, it's still like the individuals and how you interface with them, right? And you try to understand what their problems are, or kind of unravel the story, or find out what the priorities are for the company, or for just what they want to do. And I find that they're coming to you because they trust your judgment and your guidance and your expertise and your knowledge. And I've been doing this for a little while now, and it's great. It's really a thrill for me, where a partner says, "Okay, this is you take this deposition, you conduct this interview, you do the first draft of this motion." That type of thing, where I might have a lot of client input, whether I'm working on a declaration with some engineer somewhere and learning all about the nuances of some sort of service or product. Or I remember we had a very interesting kind of quasi bid protest matter that arose under DC law. So, but it wasn't within, you couldn't protest at GAO, and you couldn't protest at the DC Contract Appeals Board, the CAB, even though they have a bid protest function. There was this carve out for this particular service for the client, and it wasn't classified as a procurement. And it was just such a bizarre, the service that they provide, everyone would recognize it. Now I'll say, I can't tell you the client, but I can tell you that it's motorized scooters that are all over DC, like all this. There's a whole licensing process that goes behind that. And there's all the different companies that provide scooter services. And you just, pick it up with your phone and you just can go anywhere. And, and they had a problem with continuing their operations in the district, and they didn't know what to do. And we actually, we do a lot of bid protest work, but we had never encountered this regulatory regime before. And it required some creative thinking on our part. And, we wrote some nasty grams, and, and then the outcome was good, but also it was kind of like COVID hit. And so everything kind of got turned sideways. But it was a very interesting process to work with the in-house attorneys and they're business people who came to our offices and were like, okay, how do we fix this? And and that had some really good conversations and connections. So I like that part. What I don't like about the job, I mean, I think it was Charlene who mentioned before, you have clients and some clients you just don't want to deal with. I mean, the same thing, right? I think that's a nature of being a lawyer, and you have clients, and whether you're in government or you have private sector clients, it's governed by people, right? And so you're going to get some people who are difficult, who are stressed out, because if the law firm fails, like if you lose a bid protest, okay, like, the standard of review is difficult, it's hard to overcome. But sometimes, for the client, that means they have to fire a bunch of people. And that is, that's an awful experience. And I think that stress can translate, they blame it on the lawyers, or, the lawyers couldn't save the day. And so that puts a lot of pressure, on as a practitioner. And so that can be hard to deal with sometimes, but you have to figure out strategies, to keep you going, whether it's, you compartmentalize it, or you are able to, have a work-life balance, or something like that. But I think that's common across, different practice experiences.
What I like most about the board, I think, is the breadth of jurisdiction we have, along with the number of judges, because that it opens up a lot of different perspectives. And while the judges normally agree on the law and how cases should come out, it is kind of exciting when they disagree, because it's a lot of smart minds going at each other, and generally it's a very friendly way, but they're just showing like why they think their point is right. And for me, being brand new into the professional world of government contracts, it's a great way to learn more about, oh, maybe you present your case this way, or maybe you should look at the law this way, because these people who have all this experience don't come out the same way on everything every time. I love that about it. I think the different perspectives you get, because obviously 14 minds are not going to be the same, and being able to hear different opinions and different styles of going about things and how you should confront issues or present issues, I think is probably the most valuable thing I've gained from the job so far. What I dislike, probably on a similar note, while we don't have clients, the parties that come to the board are more or less our clients, and some of them present cases that are frustrating in that they seem to have no real end goal in sight. They kind of are just litigating to litigate. They will use all the resources at the board and then just either try to stay the case for a while, or just do other stuff that seems like it's wasting our time and resources. And that can get a little bit frustrating, but I mean, that's a part of law, so.
Yeah, so I should have started with this caveat earlier, is that these are my opinions. They don't represent DHS whatsoever, right? So please take, this is Charlene Storino speaking. Don't take this back to my bosses at DHS, right? Say like Homeland, what you have at Homeland Security. But no, I think the thing I like most about working at DHS is sort of the breadth, the variety of opportunities that you have to advise your client, given the mission space that DHS operates in. So you could be, advising on contracts regarding IT systems, which may not sound interesting to you, but if you like IT and cloud services and databases and all that fun stuff, then we got a lot of that. We do biometrics. We do acquisition oversight for the entire department. So we look at stuff that CBP is doing. We look at stuff CIS, Coast Guard is doing. So we have acquisition oversight of like the Coast Guard boats and ships that they have, the Cutter program that they have, the CBP border entry program as well. So you get a wide variety of things that you could advise your client on and get in or interact with. So you're not just doing, janitorial services contract, not that there's anything wrong with that. But you get a breadth of different things that you could want to do, given the divisions that we have in DHS and the mission space that we operate in. The thing that I dislike the most, I think, is the thing that a lot of people dislike, and is that the client interaction, the people aspect, right? Because a lot of times when you're trying to give advice, it's just sort of on the practical matters of how they're doing things and their application of law, regulation, and policy, and how they need to fix things or change things to comply with law, regulation, and policy. But a lot of times your client takes that as a personal affront to the work that they're doing, saying like, you think I did something wrong. How could you think that, lawyer? I did nothing wrong. And it's like, no, it's not wrong per se. It's just that you need to do these things to get you the best option, to get to the option you want to get to, or to make sure that you're not, violating the law, regulation, or policy. I mean, it's not saying that you're doing a poor job. It's that we just need to look at these things and make a little correction to the documentation so that when we make an award, you don't have folks like Andrew, representing a client who wants to file a bid protest against us and having to defend it and take corrective action or get a sustained protest. So it's managing those client expectations, those emotions that go with like people who want to take pride in their work and think like what they did is correct, and sort of figuring out how best to convey that to the client in a manner that, right, they'll take the advice that you give you and use that and make the corrections that they need to make, and then continue on without creating this sort of animosity between the lawyer and the client. Because you're going to have to work with them again over and over again, right? Contracting doesn't end. So it's important to maintain those relationships and sort of figure out how to engage in those relationships. So that's the worst part of the job, I think, is just sort of dealing with the people aspect, which, right, we're all going to have to deal with because that's just the nature of the job.
For me, the best part of the job is the small team, the sort of brainstorming. Some of these cases are, very complex and detailed, and I really enjoy the kind of digging through all the evidence and trying to come to a conclusion as to what happened. And I very, very much love working with my colleagues. I should make the same caveat that Charlene made. I am here in my personal capacity. I am not representing the World Bank, its board of directors, or any of our member governments. Thank you for that reminder, Charlene. So yeah, that's what I love most about the job, and you get to work with all these international people because we are an international body of servants, so civil servants. So I have a colleague from all over the world. And it's not just Americans. In fact, Americans are overrepresented at the bank, but the bank makes a very, very concerted effort to ensure that its staff are representative of its member governments. I've also had the pleasure or the ability to travel to, at least pre-COVID, travel to various conferences and workshops and things to sort of talk about suspension and debarment, talk about the bank sanction system, talk about other various researches and network, and to develop sort of a more of an international experience of exposure to how government contracts and how public procurement is used, not just in the United States, but in various other countries and organizations. So that's been very, very fun. The kind of part that I think is, the worst part of that job, or the part that I dislike the most, is we are, at the end of the day, a back office function. Sanctions is not development projects, so we don't work on the actual projects. We don't work in operations on the ground with the clients of the World Bank, which are countries that are borrowing money and using that money to improve their infrastructure or their public health framework, or education framework, or whatever. And so it can be very easy to just sort of feel isolated and not really, you have to constantly remind yourself as sort of where you fit in the broader picture, in the broader scheme of things. But it's absolutely possible to maintain connection to the other parts of the bank. It's a little bit harder now that everyone's been working from home and we're all working remotely. You don't have as many kind of hallway chats with colleagues and friends where you walk down and you sort of get an update as to what they're working on versus what you're working on, and how it all fits out. You have to be a little more assertive in that realm. But yeah, I think if you don't, at least in my role, if you don't make that effort to maintain connection, it can start to feel like you're just in your own little narrow silo, and that's it. The other part that I sometimes don't particularly enjoy is when you get those close call cases, and you really have to think hard, because a debarment for a lot of these firms, these are small, we have many small businesses, kind of family owned businesses, and from all over the world. that can be a death sentence for their business. That can be a very, very serious consequence. And so, we take our job seriously, and we try to make sure that we have enough evidence that supports the allegation that's been presented. But you do sometimes, I at least sometimes feel for these firms, particularly if they're in a situation or an environment where it's the misconduct or the bribe paid may not have been malicious. It may have been sort of just the circumstance that exists out there, and they're being pressured. If they don't pay a bribe, they're never going to get a contract, and all of that. That doesn't excuse it by any stretch, but you kind of, it's useful to be reminded of the reality sometimes in where these companies operate.
Thank you all. And Colin, I appreciate you always kind of have the hardest job because everybody else has gone before you. So you get to make sure you find something unique to say. And Andrew, you get to spearhead it each time. So I appreciate that. So here's just kind of hopefully a fun question. What does a sample day at your job look like? What is the day in the life? And I know, having worked for lots of lawyers, sometimes the answer is it depends and every day is different. So I know this might be kind of a hard one.
Well, I'll confirm that every day is different. It's and that I think maybe this kind of dovetails to the last question about like what you dislike about your job. Every day is different, so it's great. Wear a lot of different hats. For the past 2 weeks, I've been mired in depositions. And it's been very intense, and it's been weird because it's all over Zoom. So it's that I can say the technology works well, and we think that the evidence that we're getting is good. But the problem is that you don't have a typical day, and it's never steady state, right? It's never like 40 hours a week. It's either like 80 hours, 90 hours a week, and then like, oh, you settled the case. It's like 0. And so the riding the roller coaster part, it's thrilling, but it's also exhausting, and you just need to. I think it's hard sometimes to organize your time when you're pulled in a lot of different ways, and so and then you have like all this time, and like you have too much time, and so then you like take a vacation. So it's so I think the typical day, one thing that the firm does do that has helped us, especially in pandemic, is that, we have 3 standing calls a week in the morning, just where everyone kind of can log in. There's no agenda. It's, people kind of saying hi. If you want to see, or if you need to catch somebody, someone's just not returning your email and you need to ask somebody, okay, what about this project? You can find them on that call. But it's provided like a through line over the past year or so. And that, I think, that consistency helps. And so kind of checking in. And I guess there is I guess maybe not, there's not a typical day, but there are rhythms to projects. And so, whether you have a certain case or you have providing guidance to a client or a series of like meetings, like with the board or something like that, all of those different kinds of hats that we wear have their own, Nichols Lou has a way of doing things, right? So we dust off the playbook and we do that for that project. So maybe it's not so much days, but project oriented.
I should probably also state that these opinions are my own and in no way representative of the United States Board of Contract Appeals. But a typical day for me, I usually start off by checking my email while I'm eating breakfast, just in case. Some judges like to work later than others, so you'll get responses around 8, 9 p.m. So I'd like to be able to respond to that to start off the day. I check the events to see if there are any ADRs, hearings, mediations I can sit on if I'm not that busy. But after checking emails and stuff, I basically am doing a lot of research and writing all day. I generally have 2 or 3 assignments at once that require different levels of research and writing, whether it's a research memo, a draft decision. Some other days I get to do assistance with the hearing. So when the judge creates the Zoom link, they'll have us craft an email to send to the parties and say the Zoom opens at 10 a.m. We'll let you in. I also help run the Zoom, so I create the breakout rooms. I host it. I can let people in, let people out. But yeah, a typical day, just a lot of research and writing, a lot of time on email, sending drafts back and forth, getting feedback, trying to get other assignments started and finished as fast as possible because the judges are very busy and our job is to make their life as easy as possible. So just a lot of time communicating.
For me, I'm a supervisor, so I have to supervise and manage the attorneys within the office. So it's, assigning work to folks, checking on their workload. It's answering questions from the contracting officers or contract specialists that I can answer immediately and don't have to assign someone else to do. It's dealing with sort of the senior leaders within the organization on their procurement and acquisition matters. A lot of meetings, a lot of meetings are on my calendar every day. Like one that I'm getting reminded about now. So, it's about, it's sort of managing folks, it's answering questions from the procurement folks and from senior leaders. It's about being sort of the sounding board for the attorneys with the office when they have questions or they just need a second opinion on things. There's a lot of crosstalk within the attorneys within the office where they, sort of bounce stuff off about themselves, and then they come to me for like another sanity check on things that they're doing, or to just make sure that they're following the office line on certain items, and that they're not stepping out too far from what we've opined or advised in the past. So it's a lot more management and supervision than I think anybody realizes, right? It's more like, I thought I could do like a lot more procurement work as a manager, but it's really just a lot of managing folks. And again, dealing with the people aspect. Let's hope none of my folks within the office see this and hear about this, but it's really about like managing the folks within the office, which all different personalities. No attorney is the same, like no person is the same. So it's just sort of getting those folks and just sort of making sure that the team is has the support they need to do their job, and if they need the top cover on anything they advise on, that I give them the top cover, and of course deal with any issues that arise. So if there's problems or issues, right, I get to hear about those too. But that's my typical day. Probably 80% meetings, and then 20% in the time that I have to sort of deal with assigning work, supervision tasks, and then dealing with any questions that I can just answer off the bat. I do have a couple of procurements that I've kept for my time as a line attorney, simply because I just have the institutional knowledge, going back for years. So I still advise contracting officers on those, but that's my typical day.
My day is definitely more steady than it was, at a law firm, at least my experience at the law firm, which is very much how Andrew described it, right? The roller coaster, the unpredictability. I'd have a Wednesday where I'd have nothing to do, and then Friday, 2 things would come in, and my weekend is spent working on them. In this job, it's definitely much steadier, and doesn't mean that it's any less work. It's just I can schedule around things a lot better, which is very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be in this position when the pandemic hit, given just my family situation, right? So, my wife is at a big law firm, so she has that roller coaster, she has that unpredictability, and we have a 2-year-old whose daycare closed down. So sometimes he shows up on meetings. He was going to show up on this one, but Jana's call finished and he was able to go hang out with mom for a little bit. So there's a lot of that unpredictability. That's more of a pandemic specific aspect to my day. So there's a lot that I do in the evenings. I don't start work as early as I used to. I spend that getting Leo ready and playing with him for a couple hours in the morning, and then I start work when mom takes over. In terms of the actual work, it varies a little bit. The main core work, the reviewing cases, I can spend my entire day just reading through transcripts, emails, documents, financial documents, anything that the investigators have put together in the case. I'm working through one right now that I just started yesterday. A lot of just sitting and reading and kind of putting together the story. Once that's done, and we have case files that are very short, very quick, that I can read in a day. There are others that will take me 2-3 weeks to get through everything, because it's just a massive case. And then once I've done that, I kind of collect my thoughts, and then we start drafting our determination, which reads very much like a kind of a judicial type decision, where we go point by point. what the facts are, what the evidence shows, and our conclusion, our analysis of whether or not that's enough. And those determinations vary in size. We've had as short as 2-3 pages. If it's a very, very short, simple case that's easily proven. And I've had one that is as long as 130 pages. So it really, really depends on kind of things like that. I also do supervise. We have 2 interns that are with us and a couple support staff. So we have a paralegal and a program assistant. I'm not their direct supervisor, but I'm sort of their unofficial kind of helping to make sure that they're integrated into the office and that they're helping with case stuff. So, I'm actually working on, 2 different cases at the moment. I am letting our interns and other attorneys kind of take the lead on those, and I'm going to supervise, and that allows me to kind of focus on multiple cases at once. And then, whenever I have time, I like to do some side research projects. So one of the projects that I've been working on for the last couple of years actually has been developing a survey and collecting research on suspension debarment systems across many different countries and many different organizations. And so we've at the moment have received information about 21 different countries and organizations and their suspension debarment systems, and we're working to prepare brief summaries, brief overviews of those, and hopefully we'll make that public and have that available to the public. But that's kind of a side project that I really, really enjoy when I have time.
We've had a question come in from one of the audience for the panel. Were there any experiences that you had in law school that you found particularly valuable in your career? I don't want to park this with Andrew again, so if anyone would like to jump in.
I think Judge Summers, who's the chair of the board, has a moot court class at GW. I took that. I think that was helpful in that it helped me create a familiarity with her, as she does do something in the interview process, and I have worked with her before. And I think it's helpful as somebody who drafts decisions and stuff like that to also participate in how, a certain case would pan out. So you should know how to make arguments, how to read arguments, how to react to arguments. So then when you're drafting a decision for a judge, you don't overlook certain things or not give certain things the certain weight or credibility that you should. So I think the different competitions that GW offers, I think those are helpful in my current position, as well as research and writing. My LRW, well, I was a notes editor, and the LRW person I worked with is also a judge at the board. So I think that aspect helped because I got to see how he likes to write and how he thinks other people should write, which obviously helped me when I'm writing draft decisions for him and other judges.
I mean, for me, several experiences. One that always stands out and still stands out in my mind is my clerkship. Just the ability to get develop a working relationship with a judge like that, one-on-one, over lengthy period of time has been invaluable, to kind of just get a sense of how decisions are made in courts. Ben, and similar, I'm sure, you're working for all 14. I had a slightly different one where I was working for one, but just the ability to see the inside of how decisions get made and how they come to these decisions is extremely valuable and extremely interesting. And just for me, I mean, my judge was just an amazing individual, and he was a great mentor, and still keep in touch as much as we can. The other kind of experience during law school that I found very invaluable is getting published. So getting my note published in the journal, or even publishing, just a seminar paper. I would say you don't have to be on a journal to get published in law school. If you have, you take a paper class, there are many ways to get that published. And I would say getting published as a law student or as a recent grad is a great way to help demonstrate to employers that you are not only interested in government contracts, assuming it's about, a government contracts topic, it's a great way to demonstrate your interest as well as your expertise. Not only do you say that you're interested, but you have demonstrated, one, that you've taken the time to research a specific topic and analyze it, and also that your writing is good, because somebody else has decided that it is good enough to publish. And so I think that's a great way to a great thing to have on your resume, and a great thing to show employers that you can help bring to bear.
And we've yet to receive any other questions, but if anyone would like to submit them to Josh or I, just through the comments. But one thing I wanted to ask our panelists, for those that are maybe Zoom shy, if any of you would be okay with students reaching out outside of this session, if maybe, not to put you all on the spot, if you wanted to put your email maybe in the chat box, if you were open to kind of having students talk to you, just in case someone who wasn't here wanted to reach out, or they come up with a great question later on tonight.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna put my work email in the chat, avictor@nicholslou.com. If members of the GW community, if you know Madison Plummer, she's a intern at the firm, and she's gonna start as an associate after the bar exam. You can ping her too. I work with her a lot. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I'm open to it as well. I'll put my GW email though, because my position is only a year long, so I probably will be done in October.
If there's anyone having difficulty accessing that later, if the chat log isn't saved on this recording, please feel free to reach out to GCSA, and we can help to put you in touch as well.
Yes, and then just one thing is, even though this will be posted on YouTube, your emails will not be posted to the ether of YouTube, so random people will not be contacting you, but just.
Yeah, no, I'll put down my my law email as well if anyone's interested in reaching out. Happy to chat.
Yeah, I'll also include my email. I just didn't want it on YouTube for the world to see, but as long as it's not going to go to the world, yes, I will be happy to give you my email. So if anybody's interested, they can always just send me an email.
Great, thank you all. And then I am not seeing on my end any additional questions. I don't know, Josh, if you got any extra ones.
No, so I think if there's no one who has any saved rounds, we'll thank our whole panel for your insight and your time, and really appreciate you joining us and giving the benefit of your experiences.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for organizing. This was fun.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think we are all good. So panelists also feel free to head out. I think if I hit end, it might just boot us all out anyways.